Stonework. It was the murmur I noticed first. It came through the feet, not through the ears, as if lips were close to the ground I walked on. Many lips and many voices. When you come to the quarry village in daylight, it doesn't look so remarkable. Parked cars along the roads, some modern houses, but also a lot of cottages nestled in blooming gardens overhung by old trees. As I walked around, the murmur continued. Then I started to see indications of the place's past. Some houses are set at the foot of 5-metre cliffs. Elsewhere, grass grows in unnaturally regular hollows. And every old building is made of the same pale stone. Of course, you reason, this is where the stone was cut away and sent down the hill to make the city. The village simply grew into the space. Well, of course, but what is this sensation of continuous speech rising through me, even through the tarmacked roads? Then there are the alleyways. Never mind the roads, they're just thoroughfares. The old man's watery eyes flicked around the shabby pub. They're for people passing through. The villagers, now, they use the alleys. Although it looked as though it stopped evolving in the 1980s, the pub was a cheerful place. Accents indicated that most of the customers were natives of the area, never mind their strong opinions on Liverpool versus Man City on the big screen. Everyone nodded and smiled as I sat down with my lager, but only one chap came over to talk. It's the alleyways you got to look at, he rasped. His large nose, webbed with broken veins, drove in on me. Just look at a map. As it happened, I had the very thing printed out in my coat pocket. I unfolded it in front of him, feeling pushed aside by his large, round shoulders. Ah, that's no good, he said, after glancing at it. Look. On his phone, he showed me a map overlay, the village of 1860 or so, an apparition above the present streets. Lots of changes to the roads, look, but see the alleys. He was right. The alleys were the grain of the place, always running on the same lines. Now that's how they got to work, men and boys. There was something unwashed in his breath, but I steeled myself. If you want to know the quarry these days, there's no good going in the old working faces, all filled in with houses or their nature parks. He injected scorn into the very idea. Even if some fellows are still buried there, under a stone fall. I nodded, but made a mental note to look at the nature parks as well. His dog, of which I'd barely been aware, shifted under the table, and his heavy attention shifted to it. Feeling as though I'd escaped from an enchantment, I made my excuses. At night, the murmurs became louder. Standing on the pavement outside the pub, I felt it like a buzzing in my head, like hearing a drill next door. I started to walk towards the Airbnb, gulping in the fresh air to dispel the residue of the old man's breath in my mouth. But the murmur was even more insistent. Under the horse chestnut at the edge of the churchyard, it began to form words. Coppercan cocks, it said, blondin at the 6 bells. Pollen from the blossoming tree tricked down and around me, just like the names. I know no sleep would be possible with all these words in my head, so I looked at my phone for the nearest of those nature parks. At first the route took me down the village's roads with their cars and lit windows, all TVs and ornaments. But then I turned left. The alley. It was lit, except the lights were moving. Dozens of lights, blue glows that left a trail of illumination as they advanced along the route I was taking, a cable of light fibres. Beside each fibre a head, a shoulders square with manual labour. I saw worn shirts and waistcoats. Lower down, the heads of boys, heads slick with the morning's cold water wash. Lower still, the tails of silent dogs padding on their masters' heels. And the murmur, now of shuffling feet, of low greetings, of tools knocking together under the tree's hanging branches. I stumbled forward. I was in the footsteps of the men whose labour had built the famous city, whose names had only been remembered in the elaborated stories told by relatives in kitchens when the fire was lit. I stumbled forward and joined the line. As we moved, I saw the mouths of other alleys, all with their hawsers of light. I imagined the network of paths carved into the village's face, knots and lines written into the hill's stone. I stumbled forward, glancing left and right at the faces. Some were haggard, others plump, some drizzling from the eyes, others fixed and firm. All the boys looked straight ahead of them. I tried to speak, but they walked their paths so quickly I was out of breath. At last I caught the eye of one. and then all eyes turned to me, and like friable stone they broke. As if a chisel had struck too hard, faces shattered. The jutting beard and flattened nose of a man facing me collapsed. First one half went, the eye seeping as the nose and brow broke into chunks and powder. Then the other, straight down in one block, out of which the other eye still glittered. But still the lights moved, illuminating the plants and tree roots thick like quarrymen's arms that stuck out from the valley walls. Stepping uneasily round the powdered bodies, I followed where the lights led. And then I was in darkness, but for the glow trails left on my retinas. I sensed it was a cool space, more open than before. Through the layering of dust, I thought I tasted the slight dampness that lingers under trees. I realised it was in one of the nature parks, one of the old quarry pits. Slowly my vision cleared, and as it did so, I saw what at first looked like a tree trunk, but then became a crumbling mass of stone. The rumbling of its fall, the murmuring of spectators. I raised my hands to shield my face and saw, as they were engulfed, that they still clutched the chisel and hammer with which I had brought the rock down on me. It was his dog who found me. I woke to find it nipping at my ear and whining and jumping. The old man from the pub didn't seem at all surprised. "Thought I'd bring the mutt out this way today," was all he said by way of explanation. The dog seemed to look at him reproachfully, tilting its head. "Well, I suppose you should think of brushing off before you see anyone else," he added grudgingly. Then he turned away into the trees, whistling for the dog. Left alone with the sound of traffic building on the ring road, I looked up at the weather-stained rock face rising in front of me. It was still possible to imagine I saw the tool marks in the rough stone now littered with snail shells and damp leaves. As I looked, I ran my hands through my hair. Dry, choking dust covered my face.